Hello everyone, I'm Steven from Team Covenant, and I'm here to tell you about something very special happening at this very moment. Now, it's something that may revolutionize the way that you think about role-playing systems and role-playing games. And it's something that every single one of you should be very excited, interested, and most of all intrigued about. And that something is Burning Wheel Gold. Now, Burning Wheel Gold is this beautiful, brand new volume that contains a comprehensive and progressive reworking of a role-playing system that was already one of the best on the market. Now, this signals what I would consider the golden age of Burning Wheel. I know it's kind of a play on words there, but it makes sense. This is really Burning Wheel coming into its own. And I want to explain a few things to let you know why you should be so excited. Burning Wheel Gold, one of the greatest things about this book, starts off from the very first time you see it. What I'm talking about is a beautiful hardcover, notice I said hardcover book, 600 pages, and it has this brand new full color cover done by Kurt Komoda. Now, if you see some of the other Burning Wheel books, the wheels are always cool, but on Burning Wheel Gold, I'm telling you, this wheel is highly detailed, and when it's sitting on this hardback book, 600 pages hardback book, I guess maybe that's one of my biggest selling points. You know, holding a hardback book like that is just satisfying. It's got brand new art, from character portraits to fight illustrations, and the whole thing is a synthesis that really brings you into the game. You know, when you have something that's really good to look at, feels nice. The Burning Wheel book paper is actually like critically acclaimed. Anyone who knows has the books, and it's all over the Burning Wheel forums. The paper used for these books is great. So it's got great paper, you've got a great hardback cover, you've got great art on the cover and within. And the whole thing is just like this awesome experience of Burning Wheel goodness. And it sucks you in. And anytime a book can do that, it's a complete win. Now also we have a brand new structure to the Burning Wheel system. Now usually you had your character burner and your Burning Wheel fantasy role-playing book, the brown book and the red book, the core rule book and the character burner, however you want to call it. In Burning Wheel Gold, you have one book, and it's called, aptly, Burning Wheel Gold. And that is a combination of the character burner and the core rule book all together in one volume, and it's organized exactly as Luke and company say that you should read it. So you have the hub and the spokes first, then you have the entire character burner, and then you have the rim of the wheel, all of the extra stuff, all of the extra rules and whatnot. So it's organized correctly, it's all right there in front of you. Whenever you want to reference anything, you have one book to look at, and it's all there. Now, for the hallmark of any great role-playing system, you have one very specific trait, and that's clarity. I mean, a system is only as good as the players can interpret it to be. So clarity is a very important thing when it comes to a role-playing system. Now, in Burning Wheel Classic, you had a ton of great concepts and a good implementation, but there were some sketchy parts. It was rough around the edges. Then you had Revised, which came out, and it clarified a lot of things, it brought a lot of new things to light, and people really started to understand the beauty of this system. But even it had some complications, it had some issues, and there were some things that just weren't that clear. Now I think with that said, the true amazing quality of Burning Wheel Gold is that it's clear. It's clear, it's simple, the wording is elegant, the structure makes sense, it just flows together, and it gives you a much better understanding how you play the Burning Wheel. Now, when I say clear, I mean there are charts, new charts, and I know when I say charts, a lot of people are thinking, oh great, you know, I have to have these charts where I've got a degree, you know, to read them and to interpret them. Well, that's not the case. These charts are not only new and clear, but they're very simple. So they cover a very small bit of information and let you know exactly what you need to know in a quick glance. Now those charts make a big difference, but on top of that, it's the layout too. The layout is much more clear, there's always a foundation built before extra concepts are added, and I mean really, you've got a book that you can tell there's a lot of effort being put into the clarity of the text and the way that it's organized. So that shines through more than almost anything else on Burning Wheel Gold. If you were ever frustrated with certain things, certain rulings, things were unclear and vague, a lot of those, and I dare say almost all of them, were clarified in this version. And if you ever have thought about Burning Wheel, now is the best time to jump in. Alright, now, I know that I'm just telling you a lot of things, and I'm not giving you specifics, not giving you details. So, if you don't believe me just because I'm an honest person, then here's a little bit about the specifics of what Burning Wheel Gold offers. Now, I'll start with fight. If you ask anybody who's played Burning Wheel, who has dabbled in Burning Wheel, probably one of the first things they'll say is, well, there's two things. Either fight was awesome and I loved it, or fight was confusing and I had no idea what was going on the whole time, and it bogged my game down. And now there's a lot of variation there, and a lot of players are frustrated in a fight. The positioning tests, you had to know, were you on the inside, optimal, outside, lunging, how do I engage and disengage, what about multiple combatants? There was a lot of questions about how the fight rules worked. So instead of having all the positioning and having relative positions of where everyone is and trying to keep track of it, you have a much simpler system, and it's simply an advantage-disadvantage system. You're either fighting at your advantage or you're fighting at your disadvantage, or neither one of you have the advantage. So if me and my opponent are facing off, let's say I have a knife because I'm wily and quick, and he has a spear because he's a trained professional. Let's say that we're fighting. So right off the bat, we need to determine where each of us are in the combat. We're engaged, and when you engage, you go ahead and roll to see who's holding who at bay. Now, if I win, it's at my advantage. For the rest of the exchange, I'm at the advantage, which means that I am inside of the spear wielder, and I am there, just all up in his grill, stabbing away. Now, what that means to the spear wielder is he's at a +4 obstacle to hit me. I mean, think about it. If you have a spear and somebody's inside stabbing at you, you can't really poke them very well, right? So it makes perfect sense. But whenever we're doing this positioning and figuring out who's at the advantage of who, that spear is going to get a +2 to its position. And if it makes its test, it will be at the advantage. Now, how does this make sense? Basically, if I have a spear and you have a knife, it's going to be very hard for you to get the advantage on me. Now, once you do, you have a significant advantage. But until you do, you're going to be at a disadvantage, and I'm going to poke away at you. So these kinds of mechanics are worked into the Burning Wheel. It's the same idea as the positioning system, same idea about the combat being complex, being kind of a mini game all its own, and the realism is still there. But instead of being confusing, maybe a little bit overly complicated, it's much more streamlined. It follows a system that's easy to understand, and as I said before, there's good charts. You have charts for who's at the advantage, who's at the disadvantage, charts for engaging, and most importantly, there's a small chart with every single action that you can do in combat, which tells you what to roll if your opponent does another action. So there's strike versus block. You look at the strike and you say, okay, my opponent's blocking, this is what we roll. Strike versus assess, strike versus avoid, all of it's there. So you just look at what action you chose for the turn, go over to what your opponent chose for the turn, and resolve. And then you have an easy, streamlined fight mechanic that's not only realistic and gritty, but also easy to follow and a joy to use. Along the same lines as fight, we have range and cover. Now, range and cover is a very intricate and it's a very interesting part of Burning Wheel, and it really gets at that kind of that realism and yet still that fun factor when you're role playing. So obviously, if I'm over here and I have an enemy 300 paces away, we're not going to just go into melee combat all of a sudden. And it's kind of boring to just roll against each other to see who shoots each other down first. So instead, in range and cover, like usual, you have the basic idea of I'm sneaking around or I'm running around, I'm taking cover, I'm taking my shots, I have a greater movement so I can move more quickly. There's all of these intricacies with range and cover. But on top of that, now you have absolutely identified battlefields and battlegrounds with terrain. You have objectives that you can set to end the range and cover when a certain objective has been accomplished. Let's say take the bridge or slay the king from afar. All of these things are objectives that tell you exactly when to end range and cover. And you also have some new field maneuvers. Things have been broken down to be much simpler and much more intuitive, and overall the experience is just way better. Now, I've told you a lot about what you can do with these epic dynamic characters in Burning Wheel, and believe me, I've just started with the very basics of the changes here. But what about the most important, well, maybe not most important, but one of the most enjoyable aspects of Burning Wheel, which is the character creation. Now, if you've created a character in Burning Wheel, you know that it's so satisfying to leave the creation process with a fully realized character, someone that you know how to play, you know the struggles that have occurred in the past, you know what this character is going for in the future, and you know all the relationships that happened, you know all the affiliations this character has had. It's an extremely satisfying experience. But truth be told, there were some things that made it a bit challenging at times. Now, one of those was the life path requirements at the end of each section in the character burner. When you were looking at which life path you wanted to go on next, there was always a footnote, and you had to go to the back to look up that footnote and see, is this life path acceptable for your next life path? Now, instead of doing that again, Luke and company at Burning Wheel HQ have decided to include all the requirements for a given life path right there in the entry. So no longer do you have to flip back and forth to make your characters. Instead, it's all right in front of you, and it's just a way better system. Now, on top of that, you have traits. You have call-on traits, die traits, character traits, and there's a lot of confusion over what exactly those do, how they operate. Well, at the beginning of the traits section now, you have a full explanation of what a character trait is, what a die trait is, what a call-on trait is, why character traits aren't explained, which was the source of much frustration for a lot of people in Burning Wheel Revised, and how they affect the game. And basically, it's what I've been talking about with the whole structure and clarity. You have a chapter that starts off building a foundation, an understanding of what a trait is, what the different types are, and then an explanation of the various traits. Now, along those same lines, there's more call-on traits, there's new traits and wises that have been added to the game, which should be no surprise to anybody. And on top of that, I think one of the greatest things about this whole building of characters, and then about Burning Wheel in general, is that you have the lists that have been revamped. Now, Burning Wheel Revised, another one of those things that if you talk to a new player, what are some of the limitations of the books? Well, there's essentially more than one skill list, more than one trait list, depending on, is it a life path thing, is it a general thing, what kind of an entity is it, and where do I find it in the book? And it was very frustrating and difficult a lot of times to locate the traits and the skills that you were looking for. Well, this time the lists are serious. The list of skills is every single skill in the game. It doesn't matter if it's a life path skill, a general skill, anything. It does not matter. Every skill in the game is under one heading, easily searchable. So you don't know what your skill does, just go to the section and look it up. It's that easy. Same thing with the traits. They're all there. Call on, die, character, all of them are in one place. Look them up and you're good to go. Now, on top of that, we have all of the skills listed, but every single skill has an example obstacle, not a table, but a listing with it. So let's say that you have a carving skill. Well, it used to be, there's a carving skill and the obstacle of carving something is based on how difficult the GM thinks it is. A lot of times there wasn't really a comparison there. You didn't know what your limits were, what was easy to carve, what was hard to carve in the terms of the Burning Wheel mechanics. This time around, every single skill has an obstacle listing with it. So it may say obstacle 1, carving a basic wooden figure. Obstacle 2, carving something a little more advanced, a little more intricate, like a mask. Obstacle 3 is doing carvings in the side of a boat, and on from there. So it gives you a really good idea of where your skill should lie whenever you go to test it. So you say to your GM, hey, I want to do this with my skill. And the GM says, okay, well, I'll look in the skill list, and okay, here's something pretty similar to what you're trying to do, and it's listed as an obstacle 4, so you have an obstacle 4 for this test. It makes it so much less ambiguous, so much less guesswork, and it really empowers the players and the GMs to make sure that the system is running as it's intended, and that's extremely important in the Burning Wheel. Now, honestly, I could continue indefinitely about all the new changes that I'm excited about and all of us here at Team Covenant are excited about for Burning Wheel Gold. I really do think this is kind of a new era for Burning Wheel, and it's really exciting. I mean, you have sorcery that no longer includes will, so sorcerers aren't kind of the come out of the gate and blast stuff away bunch of people that they were before. Instead, if you want to be a really cool sorcerer, if you want to be a really wise, powerful sorcerer, you're going to have to put some time in. You're going to have to fail some spells. You're going to have to learn like everyone else had to learn their skills. And honestly, you're going to have to really humble yourself with your magic. And that's how a sorcerer should be. I mean, it shouldn't. Sorcerers aren't all powerful things that go to school and then they come out and they lay waste to things. No, magic is a very unpredictable, it's a very powerful, and it's a very mysterious thing. And if you want a sorcerer to master that, you've got a long road ahead of you in the Burning Wheel. And I don't think it should be any other way. You also have new divine intervention for basically miracles. There's new obstacles for those. There's all sorts of new stuff in this book. And as I said, it's a hardback, 600 pages. It's really a revamped system, but the heart of Burning Wheel remains absolutely pure. And in fact, I would say that it's kind of like it's like a cloudy day, right? You have a cloudy day, which was Burning Wheel Revised, which, don't get me wrong, cloudy days are great. They're really nice sometimes. But then the clouds part, the sun comes in, and you can see everything much more clearer than you could before. And I think that's what Burning Wheel Gold is. And as you see the system for what it really is, the beauty that really is in there, the intricacies, the subtleties, now that everything is clarified, I think you'll agree that this is one of the most outstanding role-playing systems that has ever been envisioned and ever been created. Now, given all this information, you probably think, well, it's a role-playing book, it's hardcover, 600 pages is pretty robust, anywhere from $40 to $60 or something like that, easily. Well, it's $25. This entire volume of Burning Wheel, everything in your hands, for $25. If you can pass that up, I don't know who you are, and I don't approve. So, enjoy the Burning Wheel, give it a look, go to burningwheel.org for more information on the transition and how the Burning Wheel is going to work with the gold now in place. There are pre-orders going on there currently with signed copies from Luke. There's only 250 of those. And then after that, starting in August, you can find all the Burning Wheel books, including the Monster Burner and the Magic Burner, which are still compatible with Burning Wheel Gold, on the Team Covenant store. So thanks guys so much for watching. Good luck with Burning Wheel Gold. And if you haven't given Burning Wheel a shot, now is the time. Thanks.